Okay, hi, welcome to a video on the Teacher Tuber channel. And today's lesson is going to be about this story from the Vistas textbook in the CBSE curriculum. And the name of the story is called Journey to the End of the Earth by Doshi. So, before we jump into this story, I'd like to quickly review the curriculum objectives and the main kinds of questions that could come from a prose text like this. So let's start off with that. All right, so as you can see here, this is from the CBSE curriculum document guide. Specifically, students, when they are reading a text or in terms of literature, these are the main things they want students to achieve from this sort of activity. So students skim the text for main ideas, they scan for details, they're able to refer to dictionaries, encyclopedias, they select and extract relevant information using reading skills of skimming and scanning. They understand the writer's purpose and tone. They comprehend the difference between the literal and the figurative. So, literal is what you understand from the text, but sometimes writers can use figures of speech like similes or metaphors or euphemisms, where the meaning is not direct, but they use a symbol to describe something more. And that's what you mean by figurative. And the ability of the reader to differentiate between claims and realities, facts and opinions, comprehend technical language, and specifically develop the ability to be original and creative in interpreting opinion, and develop the ability to be logically persuasive in defending one's opinion and making notes based on a text. So this is what the objectives of reading as an activity are in the English curriculum. And if you think about the English curriculum in the CBSE system, there are four underlying objectives, which are speaking, reading, listening, and speaking, reading, listening, and one more, which I will come back to in a bit. So okay, so for grade 12, with regards to the two literature textbooks that are Vistas and Flamingos, in addition to those skills that I outlined, students are also expected to focus on recalling, reasoning, critical thinking, appreciating literary convention, inference, analysis, creativity with fluency. So, inferring meaning from what you are reading, analyzing what is happening in the story, reasoning why the characters did what they did, recalling the basic elements of the story, appreciating what the author is doing with the written word. These are all skills you have to develop while you are reading these stories. Now, let's go to the story and understand what this particular author was trying to do. So, okay, Journey to the End of the Earth. I'll first read the story and then we can discuss the questions. And these questions are normally the questions that will appear in the exam. Once we're done reading the story, I will go through the question format for the CBSE exams that may come from this story. Now, Journey to the End of the Earth by Tishani Doshi. Early this year, I found myself aboard a Russian research vessel, the academic Shloksky, heading towards the coldest, driest, windiest continent in the world, Antarctica. My journey began 13.09 degrees north of the equator in Madras and involved crossing 9 time zones, 6 checkpoints, 3 bodies of water, and at least as many ecospheres. By the time I actually set foot on the Antarctic continent, I had been traveling over 100 hours in combination of a car, an envelope, an aeroplane, and a ship. So my first emotion on facing Antarctica's expansive white landscape and uninterrupted blue horizon was relief, followed up with an immediate and profound wonder. Wonder at its immensity, its isolation, but mainly at how there could ever have been a time when India and Antarctica were part of the same landmass. Now, the important thing to understand here in the narrator's sort of voice is that it's not a common experience to go to a place like Antarctica, right? She had to go through 100 hours of travel to actually get there. And then there's a lot of overwhelming emotions you experience when you go to another country. But this is a country that not a lot of people have been to, and you probably imagined it by seeing videos or reading books about it. So when you're actually there, it's a completely different experience. So, part of history: 650 million years ago, a giant amalgamated southern supercontinent, Gondwana, did indeed exist, centered roughly around the present day Antarctica. Things were quite different then. Humans hadn't arrived on the global scene, and the climate was much warmer, hosting a huge variety of flora and fauna. For 500 million years, Gondwana thrived. But around the time when the dinosaurs were wiped out and the age of the mammals got underway, the landmass was forced to separate into countries, shaping the globe much as we know it today. To visit Antarctica now is to be a part of that history, to get a grasp of where we've come from and where we could possibly be heading. It's to understand the significance of Cordilleran folds and Precambrian granite shields, ozone and carbon, evolution and extinction. Now, she's used this really long sentence to tell you a little bit about the history of that place from a geographical perspective. So these are what these technical terms mean. And she's telling you that at one point of time, there was a time when India and Antarctica were part of the same landscape. And she's going back to her heritage as an Indian person as she's narrating this story. When you think about all that can happen in a million years, it can get pretty mind boggling. Imagine India pushing northwards, jamming against Asia to buckle its crust and form the Himalayas. South America drifting off to join North America, opening up the Drake Passage to create a cold circumpolar current, keeping Antarctica frigid, desolate, and at the bottom of the world. For a sun worshipping South Indian like myself, 2 weeks in a place where 90% of the Earth's total ice volumes are stored is a chilling prospect, not just for circulatory and metabolic functions, but also for the imagination. It's like walking into a giant ping pong ball, devoid of any human markers, no trees, billboards, buildings. You lose all earthly sense of perspective and time here. The visual scale ranges from the microscopic to the mighty, midges and mites to blue whales and icebergs as big as countries. The largest recorded was the size of Belgium. Now imagine in this landscape there's a iceberg that's as big as an entire country. So just being in that place must be pretty amazing. Days go on and on and on in surreal 24-hour austral summer light, and a ubiquitous silence interrupted only by the occasional avalanche or carving ice sheet consecrates the place. It's an immersion that will force you to place yourself in the context of Earth's geological history. And for humans, the prognosis isn't good. Human impact. Human civilizations have been around for a paltry 12,000 years. So when you think about it, this is an important understanding to make, that she's comparing how insignificant human life is in comparison to the millions and millions of years of history of the planet as a whole. Still, in our time, this limited time here, we have done considerable damage to this planet. Barely a few seconds on the geological clock. In that short amount of time, we've managed to create quite a ruckus, etching our dominance over nature with our villages, towns, Cities and megacities. The rapid increase of human populations has left us battling with other species for limited resources, and the unmitigated burning of fossil fuels has now created a blanket of carbon dioxide around the world, which is slowly but surely increasing the average global temperature. Climate change is one of the most hotly contested environmental debates of our time. Will the West Antarctic ice sheet melt entirely? Will the Gulf Stream ocean current be disrupted? Will it be the end of the world as we know it? Maybe, maybe not. Either way, Antarctica is a crucial element in this debate, not just because it's the only place in the world which has never sustained a human population and therefore remains relatively pristine in this respect, but more importantly because it holds in its ice cores half million year old carbon records trapped in its layers of ice. So, if we want to study and examine the Earth's past, present, and future, Antarctica is the place to go. Now, because humans have not settled in this place, the author is saying that this is an interesting place to understand the history of the planet. Um, and there's a little question on the left here. What are the indications for the future of mankind? So through that question, we get to understand that the indications are not good, right? The rapid increase in human populations post 1950, today we have 7 to 8 billion people, and that with the rise in human health, the ability to increase human lifespan, our population has just expanded without control, right? The Students on Ice, the program I was working with on the Shokalski, aims to do exactly this by taking high school students to the ends of the world and providing them with inspiring educational opportunities, which will help them foster a new understanding and respect for our planet. It's been in operation for 6 years now, headed by Canadian Jeff Green, who got tired of carting celebrities and retired rich curiosity seekers who could only give back in a limited way. With Students on Ice, he offers the future generation of policymakers a life changing experience at an age where they're ready to absorb, learn, and most importantly, act. The reason the program has been so successful is because it's impossible to go anywhere near the South Pole and not be affected by it. It's easy to be blase about polar ice caps melting while sitting in the comfort zone of your respective latitude and longitude. But when you can visibly see glaciers retreating and ice shelves collapsing, you begin to realize that the threat of global warming is very real. And this last passage is extremely important because she's saying that the reason this people or this group took students was because that they could be future policymakers. So by writing this story, she's actually making you part of this experience and telling you that climate change may not be real in your homes, in your classrooms, in your workplaces. But when you see that the South Pole is melting with your own eyes, you will know that there are serious consequences to unmitigated human action and development. Antarctica, because of her simple ecosystem and lack of biodiversity, is the perfect place to study how little changes in the environment can have big repercussions. Take the microscopic phytoplankton, those grasses of the sea that nourish and sustain the entire Southern Ocean's food chain. These single cell plants use the sun's energy to assimilate carbon and synthesize organic compounds in that wondrous and most important of processes called photosynthesis. Scientists warn that a further depletion in the ozone layer will affect the activities of phytoplankton, which in turn will affect the lives of all the marine animals and birds of the region and the global carbon cycle. In the parable of the phytoplankton, there is a great metaphor for existence. Take care of the small things, and the big things will fall into place. Now, this is a bit of figurative use of language. She's saying that it's not only about taking care of the phytoplankton, the, it's also about taking care of the other problems that we have gotten ourselves into. Like, we constantly want to focus on development, but we don't realize that if we continuously develop without realizing how we're impacting the environment, we will see a backlash from the environment, right? So my Antarctic experience was full of such epiphanies, but the best occurred just short of the Antarctic Circle at 65.55 degrees south. The Shokalski had managed to wedge herself into a thick white stretch of ice between the peninsula and Tadpole Island, which was preventing us from going any further. The captain decided we were going to turn around and head back north. But before we did, we were all instructed to climb down the gangplank and walk on the ocean. So there we were, all 52 of us, kitted out in Gore-Tex and glares, walking on a stark whiteness that seemed to spread out forever. Underneath our feet was a meter-thick ice pack, and underneath that 180 meters of living, breathing salt water. In the periphery, crab-eater seals were stretching and sunning themselves on ice floes, much like stray dogs will do under the shade of a banyan tree. So this is a comparison between both these things. And she's trying to pull us from our homes and cities and villages to that crater using this sentence. It was nothing short of a revelation. Everything does indeed connect. 9 time zones, 6 checkpoints, 3 bodies of water, and many ecospheres later, I was still wondering about the beauty of balance and play on our planet. How would it be if Antarctica were to become the warm place that it once used to be? Will we be around to see it, or would we have gone the way of the dinosaurs, mammoths, and woolly rhinos? Who's to say? So she's trying to make us understand that there were other species that were really dominant at a time and they are not around anymore. So, what does that mean for humans who think that their dominance will go unchecked forever? But after spending 2 weeks with a bunch of teenagers who still have the idealism to save the world, all I can say is that a lot can happen in a million years, but what a difference a day makes. So it's a beautiful last line to end this story because she says that yes, we have done a lot of wrong, but if we start doing a little bit better every single day, we can actually make a difference in the long run. So here are some questions, and we'll briefly talk about these questions and how to answer them. Again, before we do that, what I'm going to do is show you the kinds of questions that will come in your exam if you are in a CBSE school. Okay, so from the Vistas textbook, point 8, point 11, and point 13 are the three kinds of questions. So point 8 is there will be one prose extract out of two from the book Vistas to assess comprehension, interpretation, analysis, evaluation, and appreciation. So they could take an extract from this story and make you answer a question related to it or a couple of questions related to it. The second type is a short answer type questions to be answered in 40 to 50 words each. So there'll be two questions without an extract that could come from this story. And that's why it's important for you to remember different parts of what happened in this story and what the author was trying to say. And then in the last one, you have to answer a long answer type question of 120 to 150 words. So your answer will be in 120 to 150 words. And this assesses global comprehension and extrapolation beyond the text. So over here, they really want to see how you can develop an opinion based on what you are reading. So if I had to ask you, what are some ways human activities are impacting the globe? Then you had to give me examples from the text and answer that. And that shows that you understood the story and are able to connect it to wider sort of topics or areas or themes. So these are the three kinds of questions that could come, and the total number of marks is about 13. So there are lots of stories again. So, but this could be one of the stories that come in that exam that you give. Now let's go back to the questions in that story. Okay, the world's geological history is trapped in Antarctica. How is the study of this region useful to us? Now, Firstly, Antarctica is untouched by human population, so you can expand on that. Okay, you can expand on give certain examples from the text saying that. So, with every question, always try to have three reasons and then write a couple of lines in your own words about these three reasons. Okay. So, over here, the three answers to this question will be Antarctica was untouched by human population. The temperature is really cold, which is because of which humans can't stay here. And that means human development and human advances have not affected the landscape here, which is why it's a good place to study. Secondly, the wildlife and the kind of temperature that exists here is not available anywhere on this planet. And thirdly, anything bad that happens to the planet will first start here because this has the largest ice landscape in the world. The second question is, what are Jeff Green's reasons for including high school students? Number one, they're the future and they can be future policymakers and global leaders. Number two, they are more curious and less biased at that young age. And number three, they are from different countries, based on what I heard from this exhibition or expedition, and they can go and influence their own local context in their own unique ways. And they're a much better choice than adults that just look at this as a trip or a fun vacation. Take care of the small things, and the big things will take care of themselves. So try doing a little bit every day. Try taking care of the environment in your local context. Try working on your city, your village, your town. And in the long run, all these little actions add up and can make a change in the bigger context. So the fourth question is, again, I think this is similar to the first question, because it's again untouched by human civilization in terms of a civilization or a group of people that stay there permanently. Though you have researchers, you don't have too many people consistently staying there and extracting resources from there, which is why it's a good place to understand the Earth's present, past, and future. And finally, if you want to know about students on ice, if you are a student and you're interested in this and you're able to access funding for the same, you can also explore going on such an expedition. Thank you for listening to this video. This is the Teacher Tuber signing off on this episode or this video. And until next time, keep learning.